Just after 11:48 p.m., a single, terrified voice crackled over the Coast Guard radio. "My wife fell off our yacht. She's gone. Tonight, I want you to imagine the water black and endless, swallowing the person you love. A calm sea under moonlight, a small luxury yacht drifting silently, a husband, 21 years old, wrapped in a blanket on the dock, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. He keeps repeating those same words. She slipped. It was an accident." But hours later, investigators found her body not near the yacht, not where the husband said she fell. Instead, she was discovered miles away, in a place that made no sense, a place she could never have reached by herself. That single detail, the body found where no one expected, turned what anyone assumed was a tragic boating accident into a mystery that demanded answers. What really happened on that yacht that night? Who can you trust when the sea keeps its secrets? Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Jacob Miller was only 21, but on the night he stood on that dock wrapped in that thin white blanket, he looked far older than his age. He wasn't crying. He wasn't asking questions. He was simply staring at the ground, hands shaking, answering officers with short nods. People who later saw the footage described him as nervous, quiet, almost withdrawn. The kind of young man who kept everything inside. But then there was Emily Hart, 23, full of light, the kind of person who made every room a little warmer. She loved the ocean, loved the feeling of wind pushing against the sails, loved taking photos of memories she thought she'd keep forever. Earlier that same day, she had posted a smiling selfie from the deck of the rented yacht off the Florida coast, writing, "Peace at last." No one could have guessed it would be the final image she ever shared. And here is where the questions begin. Questions investigators asked, questions the public demanded answers to, and questions you might already be asking as you watch this. Did Emily truly fall from that yacht, or did something else happen that no one saw? Why did Jacob's explanation shift each time responders asked him to repeat it? And what did officers discover miles away from the yacht, something so unexpected that it changed the entire direction of the case within hours? Crime scene photos would later show the deck completely dry, with no signs of a struggle. News headlines started spreading before dawn, and in the middle of all this, Emily's smiling photo from earlier that day kept appearing on screens nationwide, a reminder of the life she had before everything changed. As investigators marked points on a large map of the coastline, trying to understand how her body ended up where it did, one thing became clear. The answers would not come easily. Tonight, we're going to uncover the truth police found beneath those waves. And as we move forward, ask yourself this. If someone you loved vanished at sea, and the explanation didn't sit right with you, how far would you go to learn the truth? Emily Whitmore grew up in a quiet corner of North Carolina, a place where summer mornings smelled like pine trees and salt from the distant coast. Her parents describe her childhood the way people talk about a warm memory, soft, bright, and full of curiosity. She was the kind of kid who asked questions grown-ups didn't know how to answer. From the moment she could walk, she had a fascination with water, lakes, rivers, the ocean if it shimmered. She wanted to be near it. By age 9, she was already carrying around a small, disposable camera, trying to capture the way sunlight danced on the waves. When other kids were glued to cartoons, Emily sat on the porch flipping through travel magazines she found at yard sales, circling places she dreamed of visiting someday. Her mother's voice appears over reenacted family footage. Emily trusted easily, sometimes too easily. It wasn't said with judgment, more like a warning disguised as love. The screen cuts to photos from her teenage years. Emily holding a surfboard bigger than her. Emily standing barefoot on a pier at sunset. Emily in a thrift store jacket with a camera around her neck. Then to her Instagram feed, sunlit beaches, airplane windows, long captions about gratitude and growth. But not everything was picture perfect. In a journal entry from her sophomore year of college, Emily wrote, "Something feels off lately." The page ends there. No explanation, just a feeling she couldn't put into words. That one sentence will later echo louder than anyone expected. Jacob Hale, on the other hand, came from a very different world, a suburban stretch of Ohio, quiet in a way that sometimes felt heavy. He wasn't chatty, wasn't social, and rarely let anyone close enough to know what he was thinking. His teachers remembered him as smart when he tried, distant when he didn't. After high school, He enrolled in college but didn't stay long. A couple of semesters in, he disappeared from class altogether. No goodbye emails, no explanations. He simply stopped showing up. His life after that became a revolving door of short-lived jobs: construction assistant, restaurant server, a warehouse position that lasted 6 weeks. Each time Jacob was asked why he left, he gave a different answer. None of them matched. Friends who knew him back then describe him as quiet but unpredictable, someone who could be calm one day and withdrawn the next. And then there were the hints, subtle, small, but impossible to ignore once you know what to look for. A friend mentions Jacob spending long nights at places he never talked about. Another remembers him borrowing money often, always promising to pay it back soon. The word gambling doesn't appear on screen YouTube-friendly storytelling, but the foreshadowing is unmistakable. A pattern forming beneath the surface. A pattern Emily never saw coming. When Emily and Jacob met, it wasn't in person. It was through a dating app, one of those swipe and hope platforms where two people from different worlds sometimes collide by accident. Emily liked Jacob's quiet smile. Jacob liked the way Emily's photos looked like they belonged in a travel magazine. Their first date was simple coffee, a walk by the water, but something about the conversation clicked. Emily's friends say she described the connection as instant. Not fireworks, not drama, just comfort, a calm she mistook for stability. Within months, they were inseparable. And within months, not years, they were married. A whirlwind romance that looked dreamy from the outside but had barely given either of them time to learn who the other really was. At first, everything looked good. Vacation photos, weekend trips, smiling selfies that made their relationship seem effortless. But cracks began forming quietly. Little arguments at home, confusing credit card charges that Jacob brushed off with quick explanations, money missing from their joint account with no clear reason why. Neighbors later admitted they heard raised voices coming from the apartment in the weeks leading up to the trip. Not constant, but enough to remember, enough to matter. Emily tried to keep hope alive. She believed love meant fixing things, not walking away from them. And in her last message to one of her closest friends, she wrote something that now feels unbearably heavy. "We're going on a yacht this weekend. I hope it helps us reconnect." She didn't know it then, but that trip would be the turning point, the moment everything that had been quietly unraveling finally reached the surface. The yacht cut across the open water like a moving postcard: blue sky, calm waves, sunlight glinting off the rails. To anyone watching from a distance, it looked like the kind of afternoon people dream about. Emily sat at the bow, legs tucked beneath her, taking photos of the horizon with that same quiet awe she carried from childhood. The reenactment shows her laughing softly, wind in her hair, completely at peace. But Jacob wasn't. Throughout the day, he kept to himself. He stayed near the wheel, checking his phone, staring out at nothing. When Emily tried to show him a picture she had just taken, he barely glanced at it. The contrast between them, her joy, his distance, felt almost cinematic. At 6:12 p.m., Emily stepped away to call her sister. The audio form reenactment plays quietly. "He's acting strange, but I'll talk to him tonight." It wasn't fear, not yet, just a feeling, a small crack in what was supposed to be a peaceful getaway. As the sun began to dip toward the water, painting everything gold, the day still looked perfect, but something below the surface was shifting. Just after sunset, a drink spilled. A tiny moment, but it set everything off. Eyewitness boaters later told investigators they heard voices rising from the yacht. Not screams, not panic, just the sharp edge of frustration, the kind that grows from weeks of unresolved tension. Emily's silhouette was seen near the railing, hands moving as she spoke. Jacob stood a few feet away, shoulders stiff, pacing. The argument was muffled by the water and distance, but the tone was unmistakable. Then Jacob suddenly walked off, not toward Emily, but down into the cabin. And he stayed there. Not 5 minutes, not 10, almost an hour. Emily was left alone on deck, leaning against the railing, staring at her phone. She typed something quickly, hesitated, then pressed send. It was a message to her friend. On screen, "I think I made a mistake coming here." Those were the last words she ever sent. The water stayed calm. The sky grew darker, and somewhere below deck, Jacob remained out of sight, thinking, pacing, silent. According to Jacob's later statement, Emily had been taking a photo near the edge when she slipped, but investigators immediately noticed something didn't fit. First, the sea that evening was glass smooth, not choppy, not unpredictable, calm enough that nearby boaters said they heard everything around them, and none of them, not a single person, reported hearing a splash. Not even a small one. The moment Jacob reappeared on deck, he began calling out her name. Moments later, he radioed for assistance, his voice steady but urgent. The Coast Guard arrived quickly and searched in a wide radius around the yacht. Nothing. No signs of disturbance in the water. No floating belongings. No trace of Emily. As officers boarded the vessel, they noticed Jacob's behavior, not panicked, not overwhelmed, but composed. Too composed for what he claimed had just happened. They began asking questions. Simple ones at first. Routine. But then came one question, just one, that made Jacob pause long enough for everyone on deck to feel it. And then investigators asked Jacob one question, and everything began to unravel. If you're still here following the clues, drop a comment saying, "I'm watching, let's see how many detectives we've got." The hours immediately after Emily's disappearance felt heavy, almost frozen in place, as investigators tried to piece together Jacob Miller's version of what happened. But the more he spoke, the more the timeline shifted in ways that didn't make sense. First, he said he had stepped away for only a few minutes. Then later it became nearly half an hour. Officers noticed faint bruises along his forearms, small, scattered marks that didn't align with his explanation of simply grabbing the railing while panicking. What unsettled investigators most was the complete lack of visible emotion on his face. Not shock, not fear, not even confusion. Just a strange stillness. When neighbors back in Ohio were contacted, they revealed that the couple had been arguing often in the weeks before the trip, and several described hearing raised voices late at night. Suddenly, the peaceful getaway no longer looked peaceful at all. Over the next day, the coastline filled with drones, search boats, and helicopters, sweeping the area in structured grids. Coast Guard divers combed through the deeper sections, moving carefully along the ocean floor. With each passing hour, the urgency grew. Then, late in the afternoon, divers recovered something that changed the tone of the entire operation: Emily's phone. It was found submerged near a scattered patch of seagrass. The screen cracked as if it had struck something. When investigators accessed the last recorded file, they discovered a short video taken at 8:15 p.m. In the dim light, Emily's whisper was barely audible. "He's getting angry. I think we need help." That brief sentence sent a ripple through the investigation. It no longer sounded like a simple accident. It sounded like a young woman who sensed danger coming toward her, long before anyone else did. As the case widened, investigators followed several leads that initially appeared promising, but soon collapsed under scrutiny. One rumor suggested Emily had been speaking to another man, but phone records showed no unusual calls, no hidden messages, no evidence of anything outside her marriage. Another theory proposed she might have slipped after drinking, yet her blood tests later revealed she hadn't consumed enough alcohol to impair her balance, especially on such a calm night. Weather data from the Coast Guard confirmed the waters had remained steady and predictable throughout the evening, ruling out a sudden shift or unexpected wave. Even the possibility of a common boating mishap failed to hold up. Nothing matched the calmness of the scene, the lack of disturbance, or the missing sounds witnesses would have heard. Each explanation fell away one by one, leaving investigators with the growing sense that Jacob's story simply did not fit the physical evidence around them. Just when the investigation seemed stuck, a fisherman, a few miles offshore, reported something caught against the side of his boat. When officers arrived, they confirmed what everyone feared: it was Emily. But what truly changed the direction of the case was not the location, though it was far from where Jacob said she supposedly fell. It was the condition of her body. The injuries were not consistent with slipping from a stable surface or hitting the water at an awkward angle. Instead, they pointed toward something else, something that could not be explained by the version Jacob had repeated again and again. Investigators immediately sealed off the area, their focus narrowing sharply. For the first time, the truth began forming a shape that Jacob could no longer control. And as the medical examiner prepared the first official report, one detail stood out above everything else. A detail that reshaped the case entirely. Her injuries did not match a fall. When the medical examiners completed their report, the findings reshaped the entire direction of the case. They discovered no marks on Emily's palms or legs that would show she tried to catch herself while falling. There were no defensive scrapes, no signs she had slid across the deck, nothing matching Jacob's explanation of a sudden loss of balance. Instead, the injuries told an entirely different story. There was a single, focused impact along the side of her head, the type consistent with one strong strike, rather than a stumble or accidental collision. Even more alarming, her lungs revealed she hadn't taken a final breath of ocean air the way people do when they enter the water conscious. The report suggested she was already unresponsive before she ever touched the water's surface. This discovery left investigators with one unavoidable conclusion. Whatever happened on that yacht didn't start with a fall. It started with force. While forensic evidence painted the physical truth, detectives continued searching for the reason behind it. That answer emerged from Jacob's financial records, which revealed months of quiet distress he never shared publicly. He had been visiting online gambling sites frequently, often placing small bets that escalated rapidly. By early spring, he had accumulated debts far larger than he could manage, debts that came with increasing pressure from people he owed. Then, investigators uncovered something even more troubling: a life insurance policy taken out on Emily for $250,000, finalized just 3 months before their trip. Friends later said Emily had mentioned signing something Jacob described as routine paperwork, not realizing what it truly was. The timing of the policy, the debt, and the sudden yacht getaway painted a picture investigators could no longer ignore. It appeared that for Jacob, this trip wasn't just about reconnecting, it was about finding a way out of a mounting financial crisis. During a lengthy interrogation, with evidence closing in from every direction, Jacob's calm exterior began to fade. Detectives pressed gently but firmly, laying out the inconsistencies, the life insurance documents, the medical findings. After hours of silence, his voice finally cracked. He admitted that an argument had escalated, and during the confrontation, he struck Emily. He claimed she fell and stopped moving, and that he panicked, setting up a false story hoping investigators would believe she slipped. But prosecutors later demonstrated that the injuries didn't match a single mistake. They indicated intent to hide the truth. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was heavy. Emily's parents sat together, holding on to each other, quietly emotional as the facts were presented. Jurors listened closely, absorbing every detail, every timestamp, every contradiction in Jacob's story. When the verdict was read, the room felt suspended in silence, and Jacob's expression showed he finally understood the weight of what he had done. As the trial unfolded, prosecutors revealed a piece of evidence that stunned everyone in the courtroom. Investigators discovered that in the days leading up to the yacht trip, Jacob had conducted searches on his phone and computer that left little doubt about his intentions. Questions like, "How long does it take a body to float?" and "Ways to stage a boating accident," appeared in his browsing history. Searches he had believed were private. Even more shocking, the life insurance policy he had taken out on Emily was already active, filed, and fully processed before she was even reported missing. These discoveries painted a chilling contrast to the young man who appeared nervous and grieving in the early hours of the Coast Guard investigation. The courtroom was silent as Emily's parents absorbed the deliberate planning behind the tragedy. What had seemed like a moment of panic now revealed itself as careful preparation, a calculated betrayal that robbed Emily of a chance to fight, to speak, to live. When the day of sentencing arrived, the courtroom was heavy with emotion. Emily's family sat together, their grief palpable, while friends and community members observed quietly, many wiping tears as the details of her life flashed across the screens. The judge spoke directly to Jacob, his words firm and unwavering, emphasizing the betrayal of trust and the consequences of deliberate action. He described how a young woman, full of life and promise, had been robbed of her future by someone she had loved and trusted. When the life sentence was announced, Jacob's face reflected the weight of the consequences, the realization that his planning and desperation had led to an irreversible outcome. A photograph of Emily, taken on her 23rd birthday just months before the yacht trip, was displayed, a bright smile that seemed to fill the courtroom with both warmth and sorrow, a stark reminder of a life cut far too short. As the courtroom emptied and the trial became a story in the media, questions lingered for everyone watching. What drives a young man, only 21, to plan and carry out the death of the person he vowed to love? How could someone so close to Emily hide the truth in plain sight, masking intention as accident? The case forced friends, family, and the public to reflect on trust, relationships, and the hidden corners of human behavior. It left viewers questioning their own judgments, their own instincts in relationships, and the subtle signs that often go unnoticed until it's too late. And while the law had delivered justice, the emotional ripples were far from contained, leaving a haunting echo of what could have been. If you were on that yacht that night, if you had seen the moments leading up to the tragedy, would you have noticed the red flags? Or would they have remained invisible until the consequences were already written in the waves? Even after the trial ended, and Jacob Miller was sentenced, the story continues to stir questions and debate. Emily Hart's life was taken in a way that shocked her family, friends, and the entire community, leaving many wondering whether this was the act of a calculated mind or a young husband pushed to the edge. Now we want to hear from you. Do you think Jacob's actions were premeditated from the start? Or was this a moment of panic and regret spiraling out of control? What part of this story shook you the most, the yacht trip, the hidden searches, or the courtroom revelations? And when you consider the sentencing and the evidence, do you feel justice was truly served? Or is there more to ponder beneath the surface? Take a moment and let us know your thoughts in the comments. For those who were captivated by this case, there's another story coming that will challenge everything you think about trust and appearances. Imagine a woman in Arizona discovering something unimaginable locked away in her husband's basement, a secret that would change her life forever. The shock, the fear, the unraveling of lies. It's a story that will make you question how well you really know the people closest to you. And that story will be coming soon, so make sure you're ready. If Emily and Jacob's story gripped you, if the mystery, the investigation, and the heartbreaking revelations kept you on the edge of your seat, then subscribe now. Click the button so you never miss these real-life cases, the ones that reveal the truths hidden behind closed doors, the secrets that often go unnoticed until it's too late. Before we dive deeper into more stories like this, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos.